Rio was a regular teenager who got hit by a truck and was reincarnated into a world full of magic. He got the ability to use water magic and only wanted to live a peaceful life by himself. But he soon becomes the strongest mage in the entire world without even realizing it. Rio, a 15-year-old boy, suddenly finds himself in a strange white place, and as he wonders what is going on, a tall blonde guy arrives there, telling him that he is dead. Rio suddenly remembers getting jumped by Truck Kun and asks the blonde dude if he is God. He replies that he is more like an angel who is here to send him to another world. Rio can't believe that he gets to be Isekai'd, and the angel tells him that he can live as he wants in his next life. Well, Rio is a chill guy, and he just wants to live a slow and peaceful life. The angel has no problem with his choice, and he tells Rio that the world he will be sent to has magic, and around 20% of humans can cast spells. Rio has a talent for water magic, and the angel tells him that he will be dropped at a safe house in the middle of a forest because he opted to live a slow life. There will be enough food to last him for 2 months, and there will be an invisible barrier that will prevent monsters from approaching him. Soon, Rio wakes up in the house in the middle of the forest, and he immediately heads outside to test out his newfound magic abilities. He then checks out his house that has some frozen meat in a cold room, and also an empty bath. There is a knife, and 2 beginner-level books on the table that tell him about the monsters and the plants in the area. After that, he heads outside again and experiments with magic, discovering that he can create water just by imagining it, and there is no need to chant any spells. He wants to take a hot bath but can only create room temperature water, so he decides to start a fire instead. He goes full caveman mode and tries creating fire by rubbing sticks together, but he doesn't have the required skill or strength for that. He gives up, but then he gets an idea to use the sunlight to create fire instead. For that, he decides to create a lens using ice, by imagining individual water molecules bonding together as heat is stolen from them, and ultimately succeeds in freezing the water. He then carves the ice into a sphere and uses it as a lens to start a fire. Thanks to that, he can enjoy a hot bath at night, and he realizes that he can create hot water directly if he just applies the principles of modern science to magic. The next day, as he has some dried meat for breakfast, Rio thinks that he must increase his offensive power because he will need to hunt monsters once he runs out of stored food. He starts by practicing to shoot a water ball at a tree, and even though he can hit his target in the first attempt, it doesn't do any damage. He is not discouraged by that and decides to shoot out a high-pressure water jet because that will have enough power. However, he can't put enough force in the water jet to reach the tree, and it just seems like he is peeing from his hand. Rio feels like giving up, but then he remembers that the angel told him that the key to using magic is his imagination, and he can get better at it, only with regular practice. So, Rio keeps practicing shooting a water jet till he can consistently hit the tree. And at night, he is able to generate hot water directly. The next day, he tries creating ice crystals out of thin air because he has always dreamt of using the icicle lance magic spell. However, shooting an icicle is even harder than shooting water. But Rio keeps practicing it along with his other water magic variations. Days pass, and he becomes more skilled at using water and ice. And one day, he decides to head into the forest to hunt for some food. He explores the beautiful forest and decides to gather some herbs and call it a day. But just then, he notices an angry boar staring at him. Rio freezes in terror as the boar charges at him, and he barely gets out of its way at the last moment. The boar simply knocks down a tree, and Rio gathers the courage to fight back. He covers the ground in front of the boar with a sheet of ice, making it slip. As the boar slides towards him really fast, Rio creates multiple sharp icicles pointing towards it at the end of the runway. The boar hits the icicles at full speed, and immediately dies after being turned into Swiss cheese. Rio couldn't believe that he won, and at night, he checks his book on monsters to find that boars are the weakest kind of monsters. He then notices that even though the book talks about beginner-level monsters, there are 2 special entries at the end. The first one is about dragons, who are powerful enough to burn down entire cities easily, and if one spots them, he should immediately run away. The second page is about demons, who are beings of unknown origin, and the book just tells everyone to pray that they never run into a demon, because that means instant game over. Rio realizes that the world is too big, and he needs to get stronger fast. So, the next day, he ditches his clothes to go full Tarzan mode, and ventures into the forest again. This time, an assassin hawk attacks him, and he barely dodges its first attack. The huge bird then sends invisible wind slashes towards him, and Rio realizes that this monster is way out of his league. He runs away, creating ice blocks behind his back to block the wind slashes, and then shoots water jets at the bird. The assassin hawk dodges everything, and then charges towards Rio at full speed, but he creates an ice wall at the last moment, blocking its attack. The bird loses one of its eyes because of the collision, and it decides to retreat this time, much to Rio's relief. However, while he was running away from the hawk, Rio loses his sense of direction. As he tries reaching his house, he suddenly finds a glowing lake, with a headless knight standing on the water's surface, along with a headless horse. Rio is stunned to see this, and then the headless knight turns its attention towards him. Luckily, he returns home in one piece and continues exploring the forest after that, fighting stronger monsters and mastering his attack magic. At night, he goes to the lake again, where the headless knight is waiting for him. Rio could not find anything about headless riders or dullahans in the book, and he wonders if it is because they are high-level monsters, or if they are not considered monsters at all. However, none of that matters because he is here to spar against it. Rio attacks the headless knight with a sword made of ice, but he can't manage to land a single strike. He keeps taking hits instead but blocks them all with an ice shield. He eventually gets exhausted and falls on the ground, but the headless knight doesn't attack him because it is actually training him. As he gets up, the headless knight comes towards him holding a small crystal knife. The knight coats the knife in water and then freezes it, turning it into a sword of ice. It gives the sword to Rio, who realizes that the headless knight is asking him to master this technique. Soon after that, Rio runs into the assassin hawk he fought earlier, but this time, it has evolved into a stronger version of itself, and has also lost all its rights. The evolved hawk sends wind slashes at Rio, who creates ice walls to block them instantly. He barely manages to avoid getting hit by the attacks that tear through his shields because they are much stronger than the last time. Rio is forced to run away, and he can only block the hawk's attacks. The hawk suddenly speeds towards him, and Rio somehow stops its attack by piling multiple ice shields in front of him. He tries to hit the hawk with icicles, but that doesn't work out either. And then the hawk uses a sonic attack to immediately cancel his ice shields. Rio realizes that he is in trouble now, but then the hawk shocks him both figuratively and literally by attacking him with a thunderbolt. The monster swoops towards him to finish things, but Rio manages to pull out his crystal sword and parry its attack. He can even slash away the invisible wind attack sent by the bird, and when it swoops towards him again, he manages to stab it through the chest. The hawk falls to the ground, and Rio walks towards it, realizing that he just met the monster twice, but they developed a really strong bond. He thanks the hawk for motivating him to grow stronger, and then pulls out the sword to let it bleed to death peacefully. Rio then begins to head home, but to his surprise, a dragon comes there. He figures that it is going to be his last day in this world, but surprisingly, the dragon starts talking to him through telepathy. The dragon asks him if he saw a black hawk, and Rio panics, thinking that he might have killed the dragon's minion. Luckily, the dragon seems pretty chill about it, and even compliments Rio on his achievement. He then points out that the weapon he is carrying is quite rare because it is the sword of the Fairy King. Rio can't believe that, and he decides to learn more about the world from the friendly dragon, who introduces himself as Len. They talk all day, but in the evening, the dragon gets called home, and he tells Rio that they might meet again someday. On the other hand, the angel suddenly finds that he missed some details in Rio's status. Turns out Rio is the second person in 10,000 years of the angel's career to have a hidden trait, and his hidden trait is called eternal youth. A few weeks later, Rio starts craving seafood, so he goes to the beach, only to be stunned when he spots a wrecked ship lying there. Near the wreck, he discovers a man lying still, and after checking closely, he realizes the man has already passed away. Just then, a faint groan reaches his ears, and his heart brightens since this is the very first human he has seen since arriving in this strange world. The survivor, named Abel, recalls in flashes how a massive octopus monster had attacked their vessel during a violent storm, flinging him into the ocean. When he opens his eyes again, he finds himself resting inside Rio's small home. Abel realizes with relief that he somehow managed to survive, and his first instinct is to search for his comrades. As he steps outside, he grows more confused, unable to tell where exactly he has ended up. At that very moment, Rio quietly approaches him from behind, and Abel is startled because, despite being a seasoned warrior, he had not even sensed Rio's presence. He is also shocked by Rio's strange outfit, though he chooses to be polite and hold his tongue for the time being. Abel introduces himself and expresses his gratitude for being saved. To which Rio replies that he could only rescue him since everyone else had already perished when he found them. Abel brushes it off and reveals they were just smugglers anyway, but before he can continue, his stomach betrays him with a growl. Rio invites him inside, saying they can talk while eating, and Abel, being rather nosy, quickly brings up the odd clothes. Rio admits that he owns no other outfits and lacks fabric to sew more, which makes Abel suggest buying some. But then Abel realizes Rio must be too poor for such luxuries and quickly drops the subject. Rio eases his guilt by explaining that no one else lives in this remote place besides him. Abel then asks if Rio hunts for food, and Rio nods. When asked if he relies only on his knife, Rio instead demonstrates his water magic, explaining that he mostly hunts using spells. Abel is impressed since only about half the population can use magic, while he belongs to the other half that cannot. This surprises Rio even more because the angel once told him that only 20% of people possessed such powers. Regardless, Abel requests to visit the shore to check something important. Along the way, he tells Rio to let him handle the front line if they encounter danger. Rio assures him it is unnecessary, but Abel insists, not wanting to always be the one rescued. Rio simply lets him do as he pleases, and soon they reach the broken ship where all the bodies have disappeared. Abel assumes either monsters or the sea itself carried them away and thanks Rio sincerely, saying without him, he would have ended up the same. Abel then admits he did not find what he was looking for, so for now, he wishes to regroup with his companions. Unfortunately, the storm pushed the ship far south, and he has no idea which way to go. Suddenly, he comes up with an idea and asks Rio to accompany him. Rio is stunned by the suggestion, but Abel explains that with his help, he could find his way back safely, and in return, he would secure Rio a job so he could live in better conditions. Rio takes time to consider the offer, and in the end, he agrees to guide Abel to the city. That evening, Rio gazes at the garden he has nurtured with so much care, and feels a wave of sadness at the thought of leaving it behind. Later at night, he tells Abel he is stepping out to bid farewell to someone. Though curious, Abel chooses not to pry. Meanwhile, Rio heads to the lake to meet the headless knight, telling him he will be away from the forest for a long while. He thanks the knight for teaching him combat and draws his knife, vowing to fight even harder tonight. The knight silently unsheathes his sword, and Rio charges forward, pressing him back with relentless attacks. After a long, exhausting duel, Rio collapses from fatigue, and the knight quietly returns to the lake. Rio thanks him once more, and though the knight remains silent, he suddenly turns back as he reaches the water, and summons a magical suit from beneath the surface as a parting gift. Touched deeply, Rio accepts it with gratitude before heading home. By morning, Rio and Abel prepare for departure, and Rio cannot help but feel nostalgic about leaving the place where he spent so much time. Not long after, they encounter a wild boar in the forest, and Abel requests to handle it himself. With sword in hand, he charges, and unleashes a combat skill that turns the unfortunate beast into something resembling a donut. Amazed, Rio asks what combat skills are, and Abel explains that fighters who wield weapons can learn such techniques. That night, they camp inside the hollow of a tree, and by the next day, they continue their trek deeper into the forest. As they make their way forward, they stumble upon a group of lizard men lurking in a swamp. Abel immediately chooses to change their route instead of confronting them, knowing those creatures are quite strong. However, Rio senses that the lizard men are tailing them even after they shift their path, and Abel prepares himself for battle. Rio warns him that there are too many of them and insists on joining in with magic. Abel assumes Rio cannot fight effectively without a staff, but his eyes nearly pop when Rio blitzes through 4 lizard men at once with sharp icicle lances. When the battle ends, Abel asks him what kind of spell that was. Rio simply answers that it was just the regular icicle lance. Abel shakes his head and explains that his winged mage companions can only launch 1 attack at a time, while Rio summoned 4 at once. Rio casually says that it must be an issue with wind magic because such performance is normal for water magic. Abel decides not to press further and suggests they continue. Before they move on, Rio casually forms 2 glasses from ice and fills them with water. Abel notices that Rio muttered a completely different incantation this time, but Rio brushes it off, saying Abel must have misheard earlier. Abel then hands him a coin, and Rio's eyes light up as he exclaims that this is the very first time he has ever seen money. Abel nearly faints, realizing that he had thought Rio was just poor, but never imagined him to be this poor. To distract him, Abel begins explaining the political layout of the continent, saying there are 3 major nations in the Central Plains, the Kingdom of Knightly, the Debi Empire, and the Handlo Federation. Rio instantly throws shade at the Debi Empire, mocking the name so much that Abel can't get a word in. While Rio keeps joking about how stupid it sounds, they arrive at a vast clearing. Suddenly, a rock beside them shifts on its own, and Abel reacts by slicing it in half with his sword. Rio raises a water shield in time to block sharp stones flying their way, and Abel realizes they have stepped straight into a rock golem nest. Rio wonders aloud why they are not more humanoid in appearance, but Abel ignores the question and focuses on fighting. He lunges at a golem and blasts a hole through it, only to watch it repair itself and attack again. Abel falls back, realizing their strikes are not effective. Rio then hatches a clever idea. He conjures a massive ice cube above their heads and drops it directly onto the golems, flattening them completely. Abel is stunned, never having witnessed such a spell before, but Rio repeats the move a few more times until all the golems are defeated. Afterward, they stumble upon a special rock golem with a huge magic stone embedded in it, and Abel points out that it will fetch a great price. Rio mentions he would love to retrieve the stones from the other golems too, but since they are buried under the ice, he is either too lazy or too clueless to just melt it all. They move on after collecting what they can, and soon encounter a colossal creature that looks like a hybrid between a crocodile and a hippo. Abel's eyes widen as he declares that it is a behemoth, an extremely rare and powerful monster he has never seen before. Rio casually asks if they should try hunting it, but Abel nearly chokes, insisting that such a feat is impossible. Before Rio can tease him further, a flock of wyverns arrives on the scene. Rio lights up with excitement, saying they are about to witness a monster battle. The wyverns attack first, hurling rocks with magic, but the behemoth roars so loudly that their spells cancel out instantly, sending them crashing to the ground. Rio calmly points out to Abel that the beast must have a magic cancellation ability. Later that evening, as they sit down for dinner, Abel questions Rio about the magic cancellation skill, since he has only ever heard of dungeon traps possessing such power. Rio's ears perk up when he hears the word dungeon, and Abel explains that their destination, the city of Lon, has one. Rio fumes, demanding why he had not mentioned this crucial detail earlier, and jokingly accuses him of hiding more secrets. Abel asks if he at least knows about dwarves and elves, but Rio casually tells him to explain those too. Several days later, they climb into a mountain range, and Rio confidently states that they will find human settlements once they cross. Abel asks how he could possibly be so certain, and Rio debates whether to confess that he once met a dragon who explained much of the world to him. In the end, he decides to keep it to himself, instead saying it is knowledge beyond human comprehension. Not long after, a strange noise reaches them, and both men tense for a fight. A mighty griffin swoops down from the sky, and both Rio and Abel panic at once. Abel nearly breaks into a full-blown panic attack, but Rio calmly tosses a chunk of meat into the air. Abel copies him instantly, and the griffin snatches both offerings before soaring away, leaving them stunned but safe. The boys breathe a huge sigh of relief once the griffin disappears, both agreeing that they would not have lasted long had they chosen to fight such a powerful creature. As they continue their journey, Abel explains that no human has seen behemoths or griffins in the past 100 years. And the towering mountain ranges must be the reason these monsters have not crossed into human settlements. That makes Rio recall how the wyverns that fought the behemoth had flown in from the north, which means their nest must be nearby. His guess turns out to be right when they soon discover a group of wyverns feasting on a fallen monster. Rio feels eager to fight them, but Abel warns him that it usually takes at least 20 seasoned adventurers to battle monsters as strong as wyverns. Rio tells him that they cannot keep avoiding fights forever, and asks if Abel would be able to win if the wyverns were pinned to the ground. Abel nods, saying that in close combat he could manage, and Rio immediately steps forward. He chants a long fake incantation just for show, and then summons 4 sharp icicles that stab through the wyvern's wings, pinning them down. Abel seizes the chance and finishes them off with decisive strikes. But before they can relax, 2 more wyverns arrive on the scene. This time Rio pins them down again with icicles, but without uttering a chant at all, which makes Abel deeply suspicious. Regardless, they defeat the new wyverns and collect several magic stones before continuing their journey northward. Soon, they cross over the mountain range and arrive at a stretch of green rolling hills. Abel is astonished that not only did they defeat wyverns, but they also managed to gather a pile of valuable magic stones that will fetch a high price once they reach the Empire. Rio suddenly grows curious and asks which country they are heading toward, stating that he is fine with anywhere as long as it is not the dreaded Debi Empire. Abel reassures him that the Debi Empire lies further north, and Rio lets out a sigh of relief. Abel grows puzzled and asks why he dislikes that empire, but Rio insists that he holds no grudge against its land or its people. He simply cannot stand such a cringe name and does not want to be associated with it, leaving Abel both confused and amused at the same time. Just then, Rio spots a road running across the distance. Abel notices that the road runs east to west and realizes that the mountain range they crossed was no ordinary one. But when Rio presses him about what he is thinking, Abel brushes it off and simply says that the road will lead them to a town. Rio becomes thrilled at the thought of sleeping in a real bed, and Abel recommends he try the town's food as well. They finally reach the town by nightfall and settle into an inn. As they eat dinner, Abel advises Rio to register at the Adventurers Guild. He explains that a guild license not only acts as an identity card but also exempts one from paying taxes when entering new cities. He reminds Rio that he had already spent a silver coin to cover for him at the town gate. Rio teases him by asking if he is planning to keep a log of every penny he spends for a friend's sake, and Abel feels second-hand embarrassment at his attitude. Still, he continues lecturing, pointing out that once Rio joins the guild, it will buy monster materials and magic stones from him at a fair price. He also mentions that only alchemists know how to properly use such items, sparking Rio's curiosity to learn more. Before he can ask, though, their food arrives, and Rio nearly drops his jaw when he sees a steaming plate of curry rice. He stares at it in disbelief, wondering how such a dish exists in this world when even the protagonist of Isekai'd had to travel the world to perfect it. He had secretly been looking forward to that same adventure. But when he takes a bite, the taste is so nostalgic and delicious, just like the curry he used to eat back in Japan. Without hesitation, he finishes the plate and orders more. The following day, Rio keeps gushing about how good the curry tasted and accuses Abel of hiding yet another great secret from him. He playfully tells Abel to reveal all of his secrets at once, but Abel, caught off guard, hesitates. Rio clarifies that he simply wants to know where the dessert shops are, but Abel nervously walks away, claiming he does not like sweets. Rio frowns in confusion, thinking his behavior looks quite suspicious. They eventually resume their journey and soon arrive at the town of Lon, surrounded by golden wheat fields. As they approach the gate, the guard named Nimmer recognizes Abel immediately and is stunned, since Abel had been reported missing for months. Abel explains that a lot had happened, but thanks to Rio he managed to return alive. Nimmer warmly thanks Rio for saving his friend, shaking his hand eagerly before turning to catch up with Abel. Once they enter the town, Abel tells Rio that their first stop should be the Adventurers Guild, as his presence will allow Rio to rank up instantly at registration. Abel explains that normally, new adventurers are registered as F rank, but if an adventurer of B rank or higher puts in a recommendation for them, they can skip ahead and immediately start at D rank. Soon, the two arrive at the guild, and everyone inside is pleasantly surprised to see Abel again. People rush over and surround him as if he were some kind of celebrity returning home, and Rio feels genuinely happy to see that Abel has so many people who care for him. Wanting to give him space to enjoy his reunion, Rio steps outside for some fresh air. As he strolls around, he suddenly encounters an elf. Rio finds himself captivated by her sharp, pointy ears and beautiful face, while the elf girl stares at him equally intensely, not because of his looks, but because of his outfit. She recognizes the coat he is wearing as the Fairy King's coat, and remarks that the Fairy King must like him greatly to gift such a thing. Rio is utterly confused by her words, having no clue what she means. The elf tells him she is in a hurry and hopes they can meet again someday before walking away, leaving Rio completely baffled. At that moment, Abel comes outside, finds him, and urges him to return inside. Abel proudly introduces Rio to all his friends, calling him the one who saved his life. Everyone thanks Rio earnestly for protecting Abel, and Rio begins enjoying the attention he is receiving. Soon after, Abel takes him to the front desk, and requests that the receptionist register Rio directly as a D-rank adventurer on his recommendation. The receptionist is stunned, pointing out that no one from Abel's famous party has ever recommended anyone before. Abel insists, saying Rio is a very special case. The receptionist responds that Rio will still need to prove his strength before qualifying for a rank increase. Abel calmly states that he wishes to speak with the guild master about it directly. Moments later, the dramatic guild master, Hugh, bursts into the hall after hearing that Abel has returned. Abel introduces Rio to him and requests that he allow him to take the rank-up exam. Hugh says Rio's strength will have to be tested first, but Abel quickly interrupts, claiming that Rio is even stronger than he is. The guild master finds that hard to believe, so Abel proves his point by revealing the pile of magic stones they collected from the wyverns. Hugh is blown away, completely losing his composure. He explains that this number of magic stones indicates they hunted wyverns in such numbers that it could be enough to wipe out an entire nation. Abel reassures him that he does not need to fear a monster attack since they hunted those wyverns south of the Malefic Mountains. Curious, Rio asks if the name of the mountain range carries any special meaning. Hugh explains that he has never heard of anyone crossing the Malefic Mountains alive. They are considered so dangerous that even the highest-ranking adventurers never attempt to travel there without an extremely compelling reason. He cannot believe that Abel and Rio are the first in history to achieve this feat, and he immediately agrees to raise Rio's rank without requiring a test. Just then, Abel's party rushes into the room, overcome with emotion, as they had believed they would never see him again. The guild master decides to let them enjoy their reunion while he takes Rio outside for registration. As they walk away, Abel asks Rio to wait for him at the receptionist's desk once the registration is done because he wants to take him somewhere special afterward. Hugh leads Rio to his office while explaining along the way that Abel's party, the Crimson Sword, is one of the guild's most powerful and respected groups. Rio is not particularly shocked by this and instead wonders if he truly deserves to start a D rank immediately. Hugh reassures him, explaining that he knows how skilled Abel is, yet Abel could not have defeated wyverns on his own. That proves to Hugh that Rio played a vital role in the battles, which alone qualifies him to start as a D rank adventurer. Just then, the receptionist arrives in the office carrying the equipment needed for registration. Hugh excuses himself, saying he has too much paperwork to handle, and leaves the process to her. The receptionist, who introduces herself as Nina, begins by asking Rio a set of standard interview questions. She explains that after registering with the guild, he is entitled to stay in the guild's lodgings for 300 days, after which he must find his own accommodations. She then mentions a dungeon exploration course provided by the guild for all new adventurers. Rio immediately signs up, excited at the prospect. Nina instructs him to come to the meeting hall 2 days later at 9 in the morning. Rio is stunned to learn that clocks exist here, something he had not expected. Finally, Nina guides him to the last step of the process. She places a crystal device on the desk and tells him to put his hand on it. As Rio presses his hand down, the crystal scans his biometrics and transfers the data into a metal plate resting above it, transforming it into his official guild card. Nina congratulates Rio for being officially registered at the guild, and with that they leave the office together. Soon after, Abel decides to give Rio a tour of the town, mentioning that he wants to buy him some clothes and a staff as a form of payment for escorting him here. Rio is happy to accept the clothes, but he is curious about why he would need a staff. Abel explains that all magicians carry a staff, but Rio tells him that he can use magic just fine without any tools. He also mentions that he uses a sword when fighting in close combat, so carrying a staff would not really be of much use to him. Abel is shocked to hear this, and even more surprised when Rio points out that the small knife he carries is actually his sword. Anyway, Rio insists that he needs something much more important than clothes or a staff, and that is information about the basic systems of this world. Soon after, he learns that the hours, days, weeks, and months in this world are the same as those on Earth, and they even use the metric system for measurements. Rio becomes certain that someone from Earth must have come to this world long ago and changed the standards here, which is why so many things feel familiar. Just then, Abel comes back from the store after paying for Rio's new items, and he tells him that the main event of the day is still ahead. He takes Rio to a large inn, where all his guild friends are gathered to celebrate his safe return. They enjoy themselves and party through the night, and by the next morning, Nina has to bail Rio out so she can show him where he will be staying. She leads him to a room where 2 new adventurers are already living. The brown-haired guy introduces himself as Niels, while the blonde one introduces himself as Ito. They both welcome Rio into the room, and after Nina leaves, Niels immediately starts talking about how much he likes her. Ito laughs and tells him to stop dreaming about women who are far out of his league. He then shifts the conversation and makes small talk with Rio about life at the guild lodging. Suddenly, Nina returns to the room, this time bringing along another freshly registered adventurer who nervously introduces himself as Ammon. Soon after, the 4 boys begin to bond and grow closer as they share their experiences together. The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.